All right, good morning. Welcome back here to Trader Minute. Great to have you aboard. Lots to look at this morning with a rather quiet market, but there's still a lot of stuff to take a look at here. Stock futures, what I have up here, we saw them run down into the close yesterday, bounced just slightly. Or excuse me, on Monday, bounced just slightly. Yesterday was pretty flat overall. Sold off a little bit into the close. You'll notice that I'll zoom in here on it. This little bounce right here that occurred shortly after the market closed yesterday. In futures, we're talking about a 5.6 point move. This was on Ben Bernanke, and it quickly erased. And I think that the only reason I show that is because it really shows that markets don't really care about Bernanke anymore. He's kind of in a lame duck position. His comments, his thoughts, just yeah, they may matter a little bit here and there, but in general, aren't going to have the market moving effect that they've had over the course of the last 3 4 years, and so you know, good for Chairman Ben. I'm sure he will appreciate some of the less reactionary action when it comes to his comments. We are seeing futures move up a little bit here this morning. 6:30 Mountain Time, so 8:30 Eastern, right here. This is when we had some of the retail sales data, the CPI data, and we're seeing futures up 3 points on that. Okay, I know 3 points in the way the market's been looks like a big deal, but 3 points pretty small, pretty minor there overall. If we come into the economic calendar, we had talked about all the potential catalysts here today. We have the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. Okay, the Consumer Price Index, and this is a measure of inflation. And the Fed is targeting about 2% inflation every year. Okay, it's targeting 2% inflation, and really year over year, we're only talking about a little less than 1% on the CPI. Now, the number the Fed really looks at is this CPI less food and energy. A lot of arguments against that. Critics will say, well, food and energy are the top two things that affect inflation. That's at about 1.7. So either measure, you're looking at well below Fed targets. Why does the Fed target 2% inflation? Well, two reasons. Number one, a mild inflation tends to correlate to economic growth, and mild inflation also helps a country that is in a debt or deficit situation, because what you borrow today doesn't mean nearly as much 50 years from now. You put $100 in the bank today, and you don't get paid any interest. 50 years from now, that $100 isn't going to buy you nearly what it'll buy you today, in theory. Okay, in theory. So the Fed targets some inflation. So without having a heavy inflation, there's still deflationary risks out there. Chances are the Fed will keep pumping. We also have the retail sales number. Okay, we have a retail sales number here. It was expected month over month change, expected to be pretty flat. Came in at the top side of the consensus range of 0.4%, so a mild increase here in October. Okay, just a mild increase, and that's this isn't a game changer or anything like that, but it's okay. It's all right. There are some holes that you could plug into the data. I don't really find those to be worth even looking at, as they're not going to have huge effects on the broader market. About a half hour into the market open, we will have existing home sales data here, and we'll be watching that here closely. We may not be in Lennar by the time we get to that. Okay, why do I say that? Well, let's take a look at Lennar from a technical standpoint here. Okay, kind of what we looked at yesterday. It was down almost 1% yesterday, with the market pretty much flat, slightly negative. Lennar underperformed the rest of the housing stocks. This morning it's set to gap up, and it's actually set to gap up above yesterday's close of 34.68, or yesterday's high, excuse me, of 34.68. Okay, why is that significant? Well, if we go and look at the pre-market pricing on Lennar right here, we're looking at it up about 50 to 60 cents here. 50 to 60 cents here in the pre-market. They received an upgrade from Raymond James, and the upgrade was from outperform to strong buy. Okay, and upgrades, downgrades can be really difficult to gauge. They can be extremely difficult because when you're talking about outperformed a strong buy at Raymond James, really, what does that mean? They didn't upgrade any earnings estimates or anything like that. Generally, when we're talking about an earnings estimate upgrade, we're talking about something that's a little stronger, that's a little more solid. You can bank on it rising. Here, we're just talking about a name, and we're talking about from Raymond James, which historically they don't have strong moving potential. Okay, but what does this upgrade do? Well, this upgrade shoots it above yesterday's highs. Okay, shoots the stock above yesterday's highs, and puts the potential on the table for a strong rally of 3 to 5%. Is that definitely going to happen? No, not necessarily, but that is on the table. Okay, that risk there is on the table, and I don't really want to take it. So as we see the market open up here over the next 5 minutes, we'll be watching Lennar, and we'll potentially pop out of it here this morning. Yeah, one of you mentioned it's a smaller position, right? I mean, it's still, it stinks, but it is a smaller position. We're not going to take a bath on it, or it's not going to affect the challenge overall. Other than, yeah, all right, we pull it out, we move on, and we get to look for some nice little setups here today, which is great. But if Lennar opens up, starts to sell, and is able to break below about the 34.50 area soon after the open, I may give it a little more of a chance to run lower. But what happens, in the face of this upgrade? The risk is just elevated, and with that risk elevated, it's not normally the smartest thing to continue to hold. So we'll see what the options do opening up. The option values here on Lennar. Okay, what'll typically happen when a stock gaps up is the option values themselves will get a bigger spread on them. Okay, so we're probably looking at an option value that's going to open up somewhere around, well, depending on where the stock goes, around $1.40, somewhere in that area. We'll see what that spread's like. To just go throw a market order out for a sell, probably not the smartest thing there, but we'll see how that opens up here, and we'll talk about that here in the next 3 minutes, and make that decision there. Other things going on here today. John Deere reported earnings, and the earnings were pretty good. They beat expectations. Uh, they did not beat on some revenue expectations. They simply beat on earnings expectations. They had some positive commentary. Really curious of the reaction, because from a technical standpoint, and we're looking at Deere trading at 85.50 this morning. Okay, so from a technical standpoint, 85.50, we're breaking up above that 200-day moving average, and we are finally, for Deere, and it's been a long time, set to break out above this consolidation. And it's been a long consolidation here. And so if Deere's able to hold above 85 for today and into tomorrow, chances are we get a nice little surge up here in the 88 to 89 area on Deere after this long consolidation. One thing about long consolidations is they tend to lead to longer or stronger breakouts. So this consolidation really has been going on since, well, you could even argue June. June to November. We're talking quite a long 5-6 months here to see a breakout that lasts for a good 2 months. and continues to roll up, is definitely on the table here for Deere. Cat's going to get a little bit of bump on the news here today. Very curious to see if Cat's able to hold those gains. So far, Cat's not been able to hold any gains for anything. Okay. Alrighty. So Caterpillar. We also have J.C. Penney. And J.C. Penney reported earnings, and they're up about 6% pre-market last I checked. Let me pull that up here. So you see 871 was the close yesterday. They're now trading about 950. Okay, it's going to be volatile. Their earnings actually missed, but I think that's a really good sign of, hey, they're done selling it. They're done selling it here overall for J.C. Penney, and that's a very positive sign. Would I jump into it right here at the open? No. But after these earnings, do we get a chance to play this back up into the 12, 13, 14 area? I think we do. Okay, I think we do. All right, market's set here to open. For those of you who missed about Lennar gapping up above 35 here on the news or the upgrade from Raymond James. Options still are not open. Okay, again looking to cash out here of our Lennar position on this upgrade, as it's going to create a technical break, or is creating a technical break here. The stock opened about 40 cents higher than it had been indicating all morning, so the option prices are a lot weaker below the 140. They're 115 to 125. I'm going to give it just a second. You see about a 13-cent spread on here. That's pretty high for Lennar. And so just going to give it a second before cashing out here. $1.20, $1.25 on them. Again, it's not a huge position. It's a smaller position, so this isn't going to crush us in regards to the challenge. We do see. I did not talk about MRO this morning. MRO is gapping up about 25 cents, which is great to see. It kind of continues. There's really nothing to look at there with MRO as far as to change or evaluate. Okay, again with Lennar, giving it just a second here. I'm probably, if I pull the trigger right here, selling it a little bit on the cheap side here. I do think we can get about $1.30 on these options here. Let me show you what they look like here on, or what it looks like here on Lennar. Notice it breaking 35. Okay. You'll also notice it shows the low price of the day as 34.82. Did it really ever trade there? No. Did the options ever give us a chance at 34.82? No. Don't look at the chart and say, oh, well, I could have gotten out there. That works great with hindsight trading, but in real time, that's not really possible. Yeah, Chasepo, great comment here. Repair trade for Lennar possible? No. In fact, when something does something like this, could we do some sort of balancing act with the options? Sure, we could. We absolutely could. Do we do it here for the challenge? No. Why? Because sometimes that requires selling another option, requires margin, requires some other things here. And so I'd rather just pop out and go find something else and leave it alone. There's nothing worse than compounding something. And at this point, with Lennar and this breakout this morning, we're not talking about anything that's incredibly predictable one way or the other, given it's so far away from the 7-day moving average. Okay. All right. Looks like we're not going to get any kind of morning bounce here. I know some of you have been popping out. I can't argue with that. Let's see here. I just threw an order out for $1.10, and it looks like I'm filled at $1.10. Carl, if you could get that out, please. Okay, so 110 fill on LEN exit. Okay. 110 fill on LEN exit. Now, I'm going to get an email, and John, you know who you are. It's going to say, okay, out of Lennar, what's the lesson here? Okay, out of Lennar, what's the lesson here? There is no lesson here. The trade setup was fine. We get hit with an upgrade, and that's that. There's no real lesson to take out of this. Did I probably sell on the low end? Sure. But hopefully you'll be able to get better fill prices here overall for Lennar. Okay, you should be able to get about 125, 130 area here for Lennar and for the exit. Can Lennar still work? Can it still go our way? Absolutely. Absolutely. Would I be surprised if it goes down? No, not at all. I would kind of expect it to. But these option prices are going to move. They're going to be volatile, and moving on. But this isn't anything that you can kind of see ahead coming with the charts or anything like that. This is just the nature of trading, the nature of the beast overall here, and is what it is. Okay. Yeah, Goldell, Lennar option going up, still get out. Yeah, I mean the option I mentioned this morning, we probably should be able to fill around a buck 40. 110 was kind of my no, not letting it get below there, because then it starts to get a little too risky. But right here, I don't think Lennar gets a huge sell off today. I really don't. Okay, I really don't. 130, about fair for that. Yeah, so we popped out of Lennar. Okay, so we sold Lennar. Okay, sold Lennar puts. Okay, so we sold our Lennar puts. So all in all, we got in at 171, and what was the exit price there? So probably about a $300 loss overall on that trade. Okay, and really, there's nothing we can do about that overall. Good news is we have MRO, which is doing nice. We'll take MRO and leave Lennar in the dust. Okay. Yeah, Lennar's now 128, so you'll get a better fill price tonight, which is great. Look, I always prefer that I get the worst of the fill price end. I prefer you guys get better fill prices. Yeah, and even Human George, even you talk the perils of shorting in a bull market. I mean, I wouldn't even call it that. This is part of trading that you can't really account for. The upgrades and the downgrades. You just can't. It's just one of those things you expect it to balance out over time, and it normally does. Those of you who have been with me for the last 4 months know that we need some serious balancing to the other direction. But yeah, I mean that's one of the reasons why when people look at charts and they tell me, oh, you know what, we're going to be able to predict everything that it's doing or be 100% accurate. Really, really, there are way too many factors involved. Okay. All right, so Lennar there, where we're out of Lennar. Those of you holding it, I'm not going to argue at all for holding it, but if the option price starts to go below 110, I wouldn't get too aggressive with holding that in general. Let's see, nothing as far as MRO, no news. Let's go take a look here at Deere. You'll notice Deere pulling back pretty hard here, right on the open after the earnings again. To call this a real breakout, I want to see it hold 85 here for a while, for 1 or 2 days, and to keep above that. Notice stocks like Nike, Allstate, that closed below the 7 yesterday, right? And we talked about that. They're closing below the 7 on very light volumes. Is that a terrible thing overall? No, not necessarily, but you need them to start kicking up this morning. Some of them, like Nike, are starting to kick up a little bit here. We also have things like not Tyson Foods. My apologies. The semiconductor. Sorry, the ticker has just slipped my mind overall. But some of them are weaker, while some of them are stronger here. So something like Allstate. Those of you riding Allstate, this thing gets too much lower here. I'd be pretty nervous overall. Okay. Just got a great email here. It says, Jeff, as I see it, the lesson learned here, the lesson learned is that you can't win them all when you deal with the market. The trade made sense, but just did not work out. And absolutely, and that's what I'll chalk it up to. And there's really no other analysis there. Yeah, FedEx here. Kind of that whole same thing as Nike, as Allstate, kind of ripped below the 7 yesterday, getting a bounce here this morning. Uh, this has kind of been the way that 2013 has worked. And look, FedEx starts to trade back above 135. You're talking about something that's a little more set up on the long side than on the short side there. Okay. Sprint here continuing its monster run, John. As far as Sprint goes, this is a stock that really has the potential to hit double digits and could do so relatively quickly. I know that's aggressive, but we really could see that here with Sprint. I'd rather own Sprint than T-Mobile at this point, simply because T-Mobile is showing more stock, and you could argue that's given a little bit of a boost here to Sprint overall. Okay. Capital One, okay, Capital One here, continuing to break down, opened up a little higher, sold off real quickly here this morning. If I were to go run into a trade right now, Capital One would be what I would run into, or what I would go after, with the price action on it this morning. I'm not going to. I'm not going to for the challenge. I'm going to kind of let MRO play out just a little bit longer here, reevaluate where we are, and look at some sort of closing entry. But if I were to jump into anything this morning and rush after it, this Capital One action, when we see stuff like this in the morning, and it tends to be, it tends to have some really nice follow through on it. If I pull up a minute chart here, you'll notice all the volume that came in on the first minute, or excuse me, in the first 5 minutes, okay, on this drop. The volume here was pretty strong to drive it, and so any sort of uptick here, you may be looking at a really nice short opportunity there. Max, great question. MRO. MRO, take it off before Fed craziness here. No, I'm not. I mean, and the Fed here, the action that's going to happen at noon Mountain, 2 o'clock Eastern, we're just getting the minutes of their last meeting. And one of the things that we've seen is that the reaction to the minutes has been much less recently than the reaction to the initial Fed statement and the reaction to the Fed beige book. And one of the reasons is the Fed does a lot of talking. And so they do a lot of talking overall. And so there's not really any secrets in there. Bottom line, they're going to say the economy continues to improve, but at a slower rate, and we still need to take some measures, and interest rates are going to stay low for an extraordinary period of time. It's going to be the same thing that we're going to see. Maybe do we see a dissension? Do we get a picture of Janet Yellen and her views? Do we get a reaction? Yeah, maybe, but I don't think it's anything that is going to be like what we've seen before. Okay. All right. Yeah, SGMS. Okay, Carl's top three yesterday. SGMS here. Okay, continuing lower this morning. And continuing, it's down. Nothing really there different. Johnson and Johnson, no real shift, no real change here today from yesterday's bullishness. And then Cam here, again, no real change at all. There's just no shift in these positions that affect them. And overall in the market, that's kind of what we're seeing today. Most everything that's had a bullish trigger remains bullish, and things that have had a bearish trigger remain bearish. We're not seeing a whole lot of trigger reversals here today. You see some of your strong movers, your Deere, your J.C. Penney, or you see some of your other stocks that get upgraded or downgraded. But other than that, most everything is trading pretty flat in general. Okay. I'm really curious. We've seen MRO move quite a bit, right? And so to see it move up and move back down here, it would not a surprise here at all. But really curious what happens with MRO around this 1710, 1715 area if it does get down there. That's where we saw a lot of the resistance over the last 2 days. Broke it this morning on a nice gap. We should see some support in there at those levels. Deb, if I were going to go after Capital One, it'd be a put. Be a put. Generally, that type of action, you do get some continued downside there. And so with Capital One, yes, if I were going after it, it would be a put. Tesla continuing lower. Now, several of you are in Tesla here. Tesla gave up some of its gains yesterday, pushing a little lower here today. It's going to be a bumpy, it's going to be a volatile ride, but still probably gets below 100 here for Tesla. Apple, no real movement overall here for Apple. And then for Priceline. Priceline getting a real nice bump up here today, and in a strong bullish continuation pattern. I think Priceline can get up to 1,200. I think there's a legitimate shot. You see stocks that break $10. When they break $10, they tend to go to 12. There's a strong correlation there. Well, Priceline's not exactly breaking $10, but it's breaking 1,000. Does it go to 1,200? Does it have those similar principles? Stocks that break 100 tend to go to 120. Stocks that break 10 tend to go to 12. Do stocks that break 1,000 tend to go to 1,200? We don't have a lot of data to corroborate that, but extrapolating what happens with the 100 and the $10 marks, you can see that. Okay. Flow, FLO here, Flowers Foods. This is not a stock I follow real closely. I'm not quite sure the gap here. My guess is something on earnings. And I would look at this and say some of these moves are more fundamental. I'd need to give it a little bit of time to say, hey, the technicals are back in line and can kind of go with those. Yeah, time to add Lennar put. Yeah, I mean, maybe. Look, when we have this type of action happening, it's a coin flip. It throws the coin. You throw the coin in the air, head tails, and you go with it. And hindsight may prove you wrong in the short term or the long term, or vice versa. But bottom line is, we're out and looking to go somewhere else. Would I jump into Lennar here? No, I wouldn't if it closed down on the day. Would I get back in? Sure, absolutely. I have no problem with that. GWW, Grainger continues in its downward trend. There's nothing there to suggest it's ready to bounce. Allstate here, okay, trading, continuing, breaking the 54 level. You're just talking about your risk element increasing overall here with Allstate, and so it's do you want to have that risk on board? Do you want to have that risk on board? Okay. Yeah, J&J. I mean, J&J is holding up very well. J&J. There's if you're in the calls, whether it be from last week or yesterday or whatever, there's nothing to react to. There's just nothing to react to. Okay. Yeah, is there something that caused the opening gap on Capital One? Let me go double check the news. There was nothing I saw initially this morning. Okay, that makes sense. No, those are from yesterday. Nothing I saw this morning on the open. But as far as causing that gap, let me check another source here. I didn't see it in any of the analyst comments or upgrades, downgrades. No, nothing there. GMCR. GMCR is a coin flip. I don't have any I don't have any bias one way or another on it. Can the stock move 20% on earnings? Sure, absolutely can. Um, if we look here, GMCR, I mean, they're pricing in just for a December straddle a $10 move on a $60 stock. It's even tough to play a straddle with because you got to have such a big move. It's unless I had insider information, I would really have trouble playing it. Okay. Yeah, thoughts on Bank of America? Please pull back. Please pull back. Give us a chance to get in. That's my thought on Bank of America. Um, but overall, here with Bank of America, we're talking about a major breakout. We're not talking about a breakout that would typically last for 1 or 2 weeks. We're talking about a breakout that has 2 to 3 month type of run potential with the volumes, the price levels, getting up to 18. I'd love to see it come back and retest under 14, or excuse me, under about 1460. Are we going to get that? Mm, I don't know. I'm just looking for a better risk reward entry point for it. Okay. Yeah, Robert on Johnson and Johnson. Yeah, they seem Johnson and Johnson always seems to have legal news. They always seem to have legal news. Just having traded the stock, there's always something, and most of it doesn't really have a bearing on the stock direction there. State Street. This is an extremely bullish pattern overall. With the gap down, it basically gap down 3 days in a row. Back here in November, let me zoom in here on State Street, STT. But it gapped down 3 days in a row. And the first day it ran down, the second day it popped up, the third day gapped down and popped back up. And generally, when you see that type of action where you get kind of two big gap downs and they go up, it's telling you there's buyers underneath and they tend to break out to the upside. Um, would I contemplate getting into it on the long side for the challenge? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, Vern, implied volatility on GMCR is 168 today before earnings. You don't want to buy into that? Yeah, not typically. Would I do a credit spread on it? Probably not. I would even struggle with that. I know they're nice, but GMCR can move 20-30%. So there's a reason the options are priced there, and so it's very very difficult to say, hey, let's go sell some calls or sell some puts. You can be pretty hosed pretty fast on that. Yeah, Applied Materials was on one of Carl's top three. That's doing real nice here. Lowe's, LOW, they reported earnings gap down here today, uh, breaking down into a support level here around 48. Lowe's spent a lot of time around 48 through September and October. I would expect it to hold. I have not gone through the Lowe's earnings report yet here this morning, but this is kind of one where I would expect it to hold around 48 here, maybe even rally just a little bit, and then start to trickle lower and probably find some support around 46 is what I would expect. But again, I haven't read the report yet. Therefore, for Lowe's. Okay. Marathon. Is there a gravestone doji this morning? Yeah, there is. Does it mean anything this morning? No, it doesn't. We're talking about 20 minutes into the market open. Last thing you want to do is a candlestick analysis. Is there resistance around 37.50 because of back here in July and August? Yes, in a very small way. But there was no volume around these levels, and so typically it's not a really big resistance area. Okay, it was nice to see a gap above 37.15 today. It's coming back and kind of trying to retest that area. Okay, we'll see kind of where that holds in here. But MRO, we've seen these 40 to 60 cent swings every day, and more than once, twice, and some days three times. And so, with MRO, it's nothing I'm going to try to analyze here in the first 20 minutes of the market. There's not a game changer with it at all. It's just something that will continue to hold with that 7-day moving average. If it does have some real heavy volume and a bearish candlestick on it today, yeah, maybe we take profit. but all in all, closes in that upper Bollinger Band. We'll continue to look to ride it. Ideally, best case scenario for MRO from a trade standpoint is that it sits around here around 37.10, 37.20 for most of the day, and then rallies 20, 30 cents into the close. For something in a trend rider mode, that would be very nice. Okay. All righty. So for those of you just logging on, we are out of Lennar. Okay, we are out of Lennar on the upgrade. Why? There's just so much more risk to the upside here with Lennar. With the upgrade, with some of the housing data, can it reverse lower? Sure, it could. But to see it trade up over 36 today is a realistic possibility. And so do not want to get caught up in those options with a big loss. With the funds free, am I looking to get into another position? Absolutely, Smitty. If there's something out there, I will definitely go after it. Carl and I will spend a lot of time kind of looking and evaluating here today. I have a couple favorites on my list, but nothing that I would enter right here this morning. Okay, right here this morning. All righty. Well, thanks for hopping on. Any questions, let us know, and we'll be happy to help you out there. And we'll talk to you soon. Take care.